What we're up to, Lisa? Come over here and I'll tell you. Pull up a chair. Got a couple of hours? You just come and sit here. Oh dear. Okay. Good morning, one and all. Bonjour. Hein? Comment ça va? Ah, dobro fala, kako vi? Ah. It's a little bit better than my French accent, huh? Yes. Yeah. So today, beginning of a new week, we'll start off with a reflection process so that you just bring to mind some of the highlights from last week, both for you and for me, which might prompt some comments and sharing of experiences and some questions, don't know. Then we'll go into some games, things that Zoran used to do in his office to amuse himself and up his handling skills without having to worry about another human being present. So that'll occupy probably up until the first break. And then we'll do an awareness through movement lesson. Because I always forget to hand these out, so I better hand them out now and then I won't have to think about it. If you could take one and, you want to take one and pass it on? Then we'll do the second installment of Jello pudding. That's a great squat. I'm jealous. I never was able to squat like that. Then we'll do into the second version of Jello pudding, which is an asymmetrical version. So last week, everything was symmetrical, right up the center, down between the two tracks. And this one is definitely one track, down one track. Thank you very much. You may take one too. It's okay. We're going to take that, I've given you a script because we'll take that script and we'll do a functional integration, some functional integration practice based on that lesson, in which you will intentionally, verbally direct your student and then choose your time, place, and reason for putting hands on, should you need to. Yeah, so that'll occupy probably the rest of the day. After lunch, we have a presentation, I do believe. Someone's presenting. Would you like it tomorrow? Okay, we can do it tomorrow, no problem. So after lunch tomorrow, there'll be a presentation. And we'll have class FIs in the afternoon today. All right. And if there's some spare time, I've got a little something to, we'll probably do Jello pudding number 3. Or do the second half of the swap. So that's today. That's like the lay of the land. Okay. So if you'd like to stay sitting, stay sitting. If you'd like to lie down, lie down. Just a quick reflection process. And you got to have your eyes closed because I don't necessarily like being looked at. I told this to the Sydney mob. I might as well tell you. You're entitled to all the confessions that they got. Yeah. Even though I was a professional dancer, I never dance. I don't dance socially. Too self-conscious. But give me a set of movements to do, and I'm quite happy to be on stage when I've got a role. And one of the reasons I chose ATM was because if people close their eyes and don't look at you, I like it. Well, one can always design the scenario. Yes. Okay. So as you're lying there with your eyes closed or open, I really don't mind. I think we know each other well enough for you to have your eyes open and, oh, you're going to pick the pillar? Are you picking on the pillar? Leave that pillar alone. Now, think back to last week and what stands out for you? What shines out for you from last week? And by asking that, I mean, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Usually it's the first thing that comes to mind that I call shining out for you. Was it an ATM? Was it a conversation with one of your colleagues? Was it a moment in functional integration practice? A talk? A conversation with Lisa or myself or Jenny? What was it? Was it something conceptual? Were there emotions, feelings associated with it? Was there an awareness through movement lesson that you did last week that you experienced something new? Or experienced something that you already were familiar with, but you perceived it like through new eyes? What were some of the myths about functional integration that you remember from last week? And when you remember those myths, did something change in your idea of what it is to practice functional integration? If you had an FI last week, what did you tell others about your experience of the FI? Those of you who watched an FI last week, what questions were answered or were starting to be answered by being able to witness an FI and ask questions about it? And of course, that leaves the question, what questions are still to be answered for you? Was there some aspect of your functional integration practice that you explored last week, that you've explored already with one of your colleagues, with someone at home? What did you find out about that? What's different doing the same practice with your colleagues compared to someone outside of this training? And for yourself this week, in these 5 days to come, what would you like for yourself? Okay. So if you've been lying down, come up to sitting. And so what do you have to share? What do you have to comment on? What questions do you have? What directions would you like to see happen this week? Let's leave the floor open for a little while. Oh, there we go.
I found it incredibly liberating and relieving to understand that FI wasn't the sort of that the myths were busted, really, because I couldn't understand the dichotomy between ATM and FI. I couldn't understand why, even in theory, it would work that way. But then it just gives me many more tools that I feel more comfortable with to do in the FI than I. Doesn't all have to be able to move the head and get the ground right and everything else. I can do other things.
Great.
So I found that a sort of a real light bulb moment.
Oh, nice. That's great. That's great. I'm interested in what you edited. You went, and you stopped yourself, but we can have a private conversation later.
Two things really struck up, really lit the light bulbs last week.
Yeah.
One of them was watching Jenny do an FI on Lockie, which was just touch and really gentle movement. Then we tried it because after the segment before, when we were doing Larry, which is so robust when you watch Moshe do it, and to go back to just feeling and touching and just very gentle movements, and how profound that is for the person was a really good balance between the two. And the other one was doing the FI practice on Friday, and I was working with Chelsea. And I found a rhythm, she found a rhythm, as you know. Then we started a waltz rhythm and we were humming. Well, that so profoundly affected my self-organisation. Because when I moved back, that was on the back, when I moved back around the front, all of a sudden I wasn't falling over my feet, trying to find the right position. I'd sort of found something within myself. And it goes back to that dancing analogy. I've been thinking about this over the weekend. I'm leading the dance. So it's me that's doing the movement, not them. And that was really profound. That's really sort of changed my whole attitude towards my self-organisation.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah.
So the first thing that came into my mind was support of the group, and that came into my mind because I had an experience in one of the FI practices where I got a bit confused, and then the support of the group just came into the fore, and people, different ideas and so on. And then Jane and I had a practice in the morning, and that, rounded it off. And after that, everything just fell into place. So, yeah, that was really important. The other thing was, an unexpected thing for me was Jenny's talk about business practices.
Practice management.
Practice management, yeah. But it was, to me, this time, she's probably said it every time, I don't know, but this time it landed that the breadth with which you can actually do a practice, it was sort of similar to your Mythbusters type thing, in that the variety of ways you can do an FI. It's the same thing with a business. The variety of ways you can do a business. It doesn't just have to be a, you know, a ATM practice or an FI practice. You know, you can have a very creative. It seemed to me this time, it just really landed on me that, oh, wow, you can actually bring in lots of different elements of creativity in a business model. So that was...
Wow, nice. Nice correlation.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. How about that side of the pillar? You would have been a bit medium.
I very much enjoyed learning about the relevance of action, and when somebody comes to you and just listening to them and making it relevant is a key orientation to benefiting whoever's coming to you and you're interacting with, and then taking the action into a movement. So like essentially like just that thought process of deconstructing whatever it is, and then that in itself, applying it is in a non-habitual way or a context, so it's a clean slate of exploration. And then, but you sort of in the background of your mind, you know that it is relevant to that person. And I was querying about this because I've been aware for the last couple of years, tapping into this indirect directness of just sort of not like just going, oh no, fix your, pull up your socks, fix your hat, fix your, get that, smile on your face or whatever. And just the skillfulness of doing it in that manner, I'd personally experienced many a times. And so now just getting into that mind of how I could do that, taking the action, breaking it down into into movements and making it playful or, whatever, however I can do it. And then sort of then reconstructing it and then, making it, and then maybe making it relevant again and surprising the person. And I think that's really, awesome.
Thanks.
Mine connects to what you were saying. I was talking to my husband on the phone and I was saying, I did this really cool thing with Angela and she's lying on this roll. And he said, oh, you can do that with me. And I said, oh, all right, okay, I'll do that with you. What have you been doing? That you think that would help? And he said, I've been digging in the garden. I've been digging holes, which is not unusual for him. But then I had that thought that Narayan was saying is that you're looking at how to link what the person comes in with and how to link what you do with them so that it actually really facilitates them digging a hole better. Yeah. Because when now I was thinking about how, and that lying on the roll, this is lying on the roller, and you're sliding one side around the other, and you're doing all of this weight shifting. And because when you dig holes, in fact, that's what you're doing. You're really rolling around the pole. And I thought, oh yeah, it actually could be really good for hole digging. And then but the conversation went on, and was that, so, okay, if I was going to do that with you, then we'd have to do it in the garden, so that I could help you dig better holes more beautifully, so you could be completely elegant while you dig holes.
That's cool.
Yes,
that's cool. That's cool. That was a holy moment.
Yes.
Can I add to that? Sorry, I wasn't intending to jump in, but it pricked a story. In the 1940s, there was this anthropologist called Marcel Mauss, who speaks French. Mauss, whatever. Yeah. Anyway, he got this idea that people, I don't know where he got it from, he got this idea that people learn how to move, and their learning how to move is entirely culturation dependent. So you can see the idea is everywhere, yeah? From the way the little girl walks down the street, depending on whether she's Catholic or not Catholic, to even, and this is the point, to even the way soldiers dig holes in the trenches. Because he found that the British troops dug holes in one way and the French troops dug holes in another way. And you know what the difference was? The spades that they had. The spades, they had different spades, and so the way you use the spade determined whether you dig in one way or another. It's like, who would have thought, right? And what a crazy anthropologist that was, to think that that would even be interesting. So he developed this term called the techniques of the body. That what I've mentioned, I think twice in this room, that there are human action systems. And I think we had that nice little chat over there about Tai Chi. And that if you take Tai Chi out of its cosmology, it's no longer Tai Chi. If you don't have a reference to heaven and earth and the north and south energy poles, you've lost something really essential of Tai Chi. Ditto with yoga, yes? So from spades and digging to whole human cosmologies, there are these practices that we do in movement that when taken out of context, lose something. But at the same time, if you can do that skillfully, and then, like you said, Philippa, to put it back into context and see how it flourishes again in that new, put back into its context, this is, I think, what we're really good at.
Yeah, and the other thing that came from doing the work with Angela on the rollers was that beautiful idea of stability, using instability to find stability.
Yes.
And the relationship between stability and stability.
Nice. Sometimes our conversations with our partners are just nice, right?
They always ask the curlier questions, you know, that we're perhaps too polite to ask.
Yeah. Now, you know, the way I facilitate groups is I try not to indicate you haven't said anything, say something now. So that's not my thing. I don't do that. So if you want to say something, you're most welcome. If you don't, just want to keep reflecting and listening, you're most welcome to do that. Okay? Yeah.
I may as well say something.
Okay.
It was just a little piece like yourself that trying to, you know, show someone an easier way to do something and integrate it into their whatever it's for. I know I haven't done it with her yet because she's away, but my sister's got huge foot problems and knee issues and all, and she's a hairdresser. And I was just lying there picturing how she works. And I know when I've tried to explain things to her, she goes, blah, 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 you're talking to a wall, whatever. So, so I just do what I've got to do with it. But I thought about, because I know she moves, when she sidesteps to cut someone's hair or whatever, she's very, she just moves very straight with her pelvis, like there's a really straight movement. And I thought, how can I get her to understand and not go blah, blah, blah to me? So I thought, just putting it in the context to her, like when you cut someone's hair, you don't just cut it straight across. You go around the contours of their head, or else it's going to be a bad haircut. So I could maybe get it across to her that that's what your hip joint's sort of like, and get her to move through space a little bit nicer to work around her clients. But yeah, it's just a way to get into her brain to do it, instead of going like, oh, you're talking to the hand kind of thing. So there's always little ways that I've got to try and integrate it into their way of
Yep.
thinking better.
Yep. So you've just indicated the unsaid third method in the Feldenkrais method, and that's the telling of stories, metaphors, and analogies. Yeah, that's actually usually unacknowledged, but it is the conversations that we have with people, the way we speak to them, the way, you know, we make this analogy between the curve of the hair and the curve of the arc of the movement. For some people, that's actually enough. They just go, they drop into it straight away. Yeah. And for others, no, they need to be a bit more ATM guidance, and of some they need some more tactual guidance. So there is 3 different ways of doing this work, not just 2. Yeah. So thanks for that story. You see, never. Yeah. Go.
So one of the things that I have been playing with, or maybe even struggling with, is an partly myth, partly not to be busted, but maybe to be opened a little bit, which kind of comes from this too. You know, that what I took initially from whoever, you know, that we really need to link clearly, really clearly when we do functional integration.
Can you be more serious? Just be
really
more
clearly.
Oh, yeah, it's not there.
Yeah. Clearly link it to a function. So whether it's an A, not functioning, but just link it to a function. And what busted that for me really clearly was watching Lisa's FI with Kevin last week, because there was a really specific idea for Kevin, and you could see Lisa, you know, working with that, but then taking it way beyond that. And then bringing it back in again, and then taking it, you know, there was this kind of dialogue between them, some unsaid, some really, you know, obviously said. And then for Kevin, is Kevin here?
No, he's not yet.
It was so much more than what he'd brought initially. It had, you know, the pain in his foot was almost gone, because all of this had opened up for him. It wasn't the pain in his foot. It was the way he viewed life could change. You know, so he'd gone from a really particular function that it was giving him a lot of grief to, oh, wow. You know, it's not just about me walking upstairs or digging in the garden.
And yet it is.
Yeah,
it's both. It is, and it's more.
Yeah, that's what it's the opening of, it's more than that.
Wow. That's quite a change.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I know that physical educationalists and probably movement-based therapists, they all have what they call their taxonomies of everyday functional activities. You know, you have these taxonomies, these long lists of categories of. Am I talking? We? No. So for instance, you mentioned function. You know, the function in the Feldenkrais method is a little bit, woo, you know, what the hell does he mean? Well, feeling and emoting is a very particular function in human life. Yeah? Expressing, feeling, emoting, expressing. A very particular set of functions. So they are functional. The affective state through my body, and the way I express those affective states, and how those affective states manifest in me. Because it's not until it hits the musculature that I even know those chemical things are going on, really. So that's a whole category of functions. But usually the categories of functions that we have don't include that. Nor do the usual categories include the function of play. All creatures that have sophisticated nervous systems usually mammals, play. All creatures do. So play is a function in itself, expressing affect, emotions. They're a function in themselves. What else? What else is a category? Locomoting is a function in itself. Self-maintenance, breathing, digestion, function in itself. You know, so that's what I mean by taxonomies, different columns with all these things that are running through them. And when we realize that, wow, the breadth of practice goes, ooh, I can deal with all of that. Whatever the person brings to the table, whatever they want to need. Yeah, yeah. So good. Nice. Very nice. Uh-huh. Yeah.
So many highlights for me this week. They all related. You know, I'm coming back to what the lesson that Lisa gave to Kevin, and then the Jenny's lesson as well, and then the conversations that we have, and the thing with Jenny about listening. And everything for me this week, it was about noticing more and doing less in myself. And by listening, and related to my first relationship with my partner, for example, we have this relationship when we think we're listening to each other. And I thought, I'm listening to you, and but I wasn't listening to him in order to really listening to him. So when Jenny was saying that about the relation, you know, how you're gonna, everything is gonna change if you start to listen, I really changed because I changed. So what I changed, it was just like, okay, I'm gonna think about all the things that he's been saying and noticing. And if you're noticing them, I don't really need to do much. It's just not like, okay, now you listen to me, and then we got into this loop, and we both lost.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
So I changed. Only one little thing, and the whole system changed. And I think that's the same with myself in awareness movement or in FI.
Yeah.
When I did this, I felt like Elizabeth gave me an FI the other day because she was really observing what I was doing. And she didn't put hands on, but she was really holding the space for me. And I changed one thing, which was listening more carefully and noticing more rather than doing. And the whole thing changed everywhere. And the next day, I've got a lot of clarity, more creativity, all these writing things coming out. It was just very, with no effort. And so it was, that's what I'm saying, so many highlights, because changed my relationship with myself, with my partner, with the group, with, you know, with you, with everything. It's just really, and one thing that I changed is that listening. And by listening, I notice more and I do less.
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice. And that's like, if I draw, you drew, Philippa, you draw a small arc in space. I'm going to draw a big arc. So from your arc all the way to here. So from the FI that is based on listening, and then you do something to the arc of leading. I'm leading. Are you ready to follow? Yeah, it's a really interesting arc. It has two ends and then everything in between. It can be both, and it can be both. Now it's leading. Now it's listening. Now it's leading. Now it's listening. So it's not either or. It changes. It can change over the duration of a lesson, and from lesson to lesson. Yeah. What was the highlight for you, Lisa? Anything? You don't have to say. See, I said I don't do that, but then I did it. You want to say something?
Can I say something first? That's why I'm holding on to it.
You got
no,
the box?
No, I was waiting to speak.
Okay.
Just to follow on from that, that was a really wonderful experience for me as well, because years of training of my ears as a singing teacher and voice worker,
the visual sense of mine, most people, it's their most highly developed, but for me, it's not.
Mm.
And that lesson was about listening with my eyes.
Mm.
And so I didn't touch you, but I kept seeing things. And it was a really exciting experience. I can listen with my eyes, because that's been, for me, one of the hardest things about this work. Yeah. And it was just fabulous. And when I just see these little things and get her to pay attention, then it was just beautiful to experience.
Very nice. And that, you know, it is that that calling of attending. We usually say, you know, listen. You know, listen to me, or listen to this, or listen to the body. It's like, really important.
But it's about listening with all your senses. And when you say listen to me, I have a very specific answer to it. So it's important.
Chuck. Caught on the bounce.
I'm not sure which way to go. There's a few things, but
sorry, I surprised you there.
You did. That's okay. Okay, so a couple of things. The myth of FI thing made me think of my practice, which, you know, certainly some of those myths I follow a lot of the time, but not all of the time. So, and I'm sort of incorporating some other ideas in with this work as well, and it's been a bit of a struggle going, okay, so which bit's Feldenkrais and which bit's the other stuff, and what do I have to keep it pure in here?
Oh no!
You know,
the orthodoxy.
Yeah, that's right. And all that, and then the challenge of, and now I have to do an FI that's going to comply with what is, you know, being taught in here, you know, all of that sort of, and be able to explain and justify and answer questions while I'm actually doing it. Oh my God. But actually that was quite, I mean, I found it really challenging the first time. I'm going, I've got to do it and think about what I'm doing and talk about what I'm doing is like, you know, and keep track of this relationship as well as the relationship with people watching. So it's really nice to hear that made sense to you. But there is something about being able to, and I know this has been challenging for me for a long time, is to be able to verbalize what it is that we do in this method. It's a challenge always, but I think the first question, Linda asked me something when I was working with Kevin, and I went, I don't know. Why did you put two hands there? I don't know.
That's an honest answer.
Yeah, but being able to, you know, second time around it was much easier. I think it's going to get easier, and that's just so good for me to do, but also to bring it all together, the thinking, the doing, the verbalizing, the and also staying loose enough to be able to kind of
you know,
bring it all together.
I'm just going to bounce off you here a little bit. So maybe sometime this week it would be useful for myself, you and Jenny to talk about the nature of our practices outside of this training room, because there's something that you said that's actually true, and that is because you're in a Feldenkrais training, you know, we as your facilitators try to keep the material to what we think is Feldenkrais material. But I know that when I practice outside of the room, I'll use whatever I know to get that state. I'll use whatever I know. So maybe sometime during this week we can address that, so that you're not operating under the illusion, that you've got the mythological Feldenkrais police, the orthodoxy police behind your back going, that's not what Feldenkrais is. Two, that you don't start to develop multiple personalities, even though you do have multiple personalities, but that's okay. That you have to put this hat on, then take it off, and then put this hat on. You just let come out what comes out for the service of the person in front of you, basically. And the skills that you have, let them appear. But for the purposes of it's almost poetic, but for the purposes of in here, we're trying to give you what Feldenkrais created. When you start to practice, you'll create what you create in your practice, full stop. So if you come from a health background, you'll incorporate that. If you come from an educational background, you'll incorporate that. If you come from a dance, contact, improv background, you'll incorporate that. Music background, you'll incorporate that. How could you not? I mean, how could you not? Especially if the person is evoking out of you what they want. They evoke it out of you. And if it's in you, it gets evoked. If it's not in you, it can't get evoked. It's just not. Yeah. So that'd be good.
Can I give a lovely example of that, actually using the other person's world to evoke that? When I discovered that one of my sit bones was missing in a particular spot with Jenny.
It reminds me of that Looney cartoon. What are belly buttons for?
So to get me to do this, she got me to sing a marching song.
Good.
So she was working with my realm, you know, and so that's that parallel to that of owning our own realm and the clients of this weaving that we can do when we're kind of really open to each other's worlds.
Hence the importance of knowing the world that they live in, right?
Yeah, it's back to the shovel stuff.
Yep, exactly. Yep. Nina.
About the last week experiences really was a very, very rich experience, but I would like to emphasize just to point on really one.
Yeah.
And that is, I don't know, I improved it or simply discovered it. It's a kinesthetic empathy. And that was for me something really outstanding. Watching FIs and working with the pairs. Because what I applied to the student, and when being like a practitioner, and then when we changed the roles, and I realized what really might be, again, I wasn't sure 100%, we are all different, but what might be my partner held, and it wasn't exactly what I expected when I listened the body of the other person. And that is something really extraordinary, what I discovered last week.
That's nice.
For myself.
Very good. Yeah. Yeah. Kinesthetic empathy.
Yes.
Very good. Very good. I should have included in the reflection something you didn't like. Okay. What didn't you like? What perturbed you enough to go, yeah, don't like that?
Clearly my learning style, but I found it really difficult being talked through an FI. You know, that first, when we were...
That's because it wasn't an FI.
No, but the process of someone saying, switch now, you know, put your hand here, then put your hand here, and then do this, and for the length of time that was kind of allocated, I found that really perturbing.
Yeah.
Because I was sort of out here, as well as here, and then here and here. I'm like, this feels like it's long enough. I shouldn't be here anymore. But it was for me. So then when, you know,
that's honest.
Go play was much better. Here are the parameters. Find what you can. You know, there are all these options you have. Now figure it out. For me, as a learner, was much better than here's this time. Here's this time. Just go backwards. Don't go forwards. You know. So
it's
for me,
really perturbing. To actually. So may I? So I'm not.
I do get the process.
No, I'm sure
intellectually,
you do.
I'm like, yeah, this is great. I'm like, oh.
No. But the question was, what did you find perturbing? Yes, and so it was deliberately perturbing. I'll tell you where it came from. This was. You can thank your colleagues in Sydney next time you see them. You can thank them. So The first day, I let them go and play. Right? We did an awareness through movement lesson. So you're getting an insight into crafting things, crafting situations. I let them play based on observe a person, then do something. Observe a person, and then do something. Well, they played in the way that they know how to play, which was like hunched over and small field of perception and this and that. And so all the self-remembering went bye-bye, out the window, yeah? So then I asked myself, well, that's great. They came up with great stuff, don't get me wrong, yeah? However, what is it that we bring from ATM into functional integration? And that is awareness of self in action. They were not aware of themselves in action. So what do? You create a scenario that the play has been taken back to an awareness through movement scenario. And it's tempting when we have an object in front of us to just deal with the object and forget ourselves. But when the object is another person, suddenly you've got physical object and they're a person. I'd be worried if you just thought of them as a physical object. That would be, I'd be worried, yeah? But, so, what I've often with my colleagues said, look, functional integration when you're doing hands-on work is just like an awareness through movement lesson with your hands on somebody. An awareness through movement lesson for me, not them, me. That's perturbing because it challenges what the notion of hands-on practice is. That it's like in social science theory that you can have a stance called neutral, that you can be a neutral observer. Get real. You're never a neutral observer. You're always observing from a stance, from a place. So the same thing here. Well, if you're going to have your hands on, you might as well lead very beautifully, yeah? And in the process of leading, this is the, I'm going to go back to this arc now, yeah? In the process of leading, you are also listening. Listening to who? Listening to me. Don't worry about them, because you see, if I go, you know, you experience it. Well, is it me? I don't think it's me. There's some immovable object out there. Yes. That's perturbing to think. Now I'll just get right to the base of it, and it's really the ground. To think that everything that we perceive in the world is based on my perceptual judgment, that's a weird place for some people. They think, no, it's out there. Well, actually, no, it's in here. The title of the Awareness Summit, the map is the territory. It is. The map is the territory. Based on the kind of body that you and I have, 2 legs, 2 arms, based on the sensory organs that we have, we'll never know what it is to climb up a wall unassisted. But an ant does. An ant can do that. A gecko can do that. We can't. We need stuff. We'll never know what it's like to pass literally through an eye of a needle. And I don't mean, give up all your riches. We'll never know that. You can't know that. So there are some things that you and I with this body, this living, animate body, can know, and some things we can't. And it's our way of interacting with the world that creates that. Who are the creators? It's not just me, it's me in interaction with you. Here's the arc, yeah? I interact with you in a certain way, and I sense certain things from you. I interact with you a different way, And I sense other things from you, because you see, it's not all set in stone. It really is dynamic. It's dynamic. And that is perturbing, fundamentally perturbing. Yeah. So, yeah, well spotted.
I mean, that whole idea of being taught how to lead is really interesting. I mean, it is very interesting.
Yeah.
Because my husband and I went tango lessons, didn't we? And
does he do contact?
No.
Okay, sorry, I don't know your husband.
I will tell you the story, because then you will realize that he doesn't do contact.
Okay, thank you. I interrupted.
So in tango, the man leads. And so we go to this beginner tango lesson, and they take there's about 10 weeks. And then in the first tango class, we all have to walk around the room to the beat of the music. And we're also told where to put our weight and how to put our so all of a sudden, my husband has been told to have his weight over his feet and push from his toes and walk around the room to the music. And then somewhere in the first lesson, he also has to bring his weight forward over his feet, walk in time to the music, and steer the woman he's partnered with backwards around the room. And then come to a stop, count the music, and then start again. Anyway, he's going, afterwards he goes, I don't think I want to go back. Because he said, let alone then sort of towards the end of the first lesson, we have to go forward, step together, stop.
Mm-hmm.
Wait for 4 counts, just keeping your feet stepping, and then do it again, leading somebody going backwards. He's like, I'm not going back, because I can't remember, I can't hear the music because I'm having to keep my weight forward. I can't steer the person backwards because I can't remember which foot I'm supposed to be. I can't, you know. It's like, he goes from being fairly relaxed kind of person to being this ironing board with feet.
Nice image.
He loses every single joint in his body because he has to remember too many things. And he says, I just don't see how I will ever be able to do that and lead because I can't remember all the other steps.
Yep.
Yeah. Well.
Lucky knows.
Yeah, well, there wasn't one because he didn't have one with those things in himself.
I know. So can you see how the desire to learn tango is then very much mediated by the ability of the teacher to craft the scenarios one step at a time, where everybody goes, I can do this. Yes, it feels a little bit awkward, but I can do this. Now that's quite a skill. And I would say that awareness through movement lessons are like teaching you that. Yeah.
He actually needed somebody to give him time. You know, put your hand and feel that. What does that feel like? And it just all happened so fast for him. He couldn't even begin to play because there were too many other things that he had to attend to.
Exactly. Can I chuck in a story here? It's also related.
Can I just say something first? Just
go ahead. Yeah.
Because the other side of that was that I didn't hear you say, I was the second person, that you weren't going to talk us through it. And I'm waiting and really looking forward to it. Because I thought, oh, that'll be good. That'll break up the steps for me. That'll be great. And you never did it.
You see.
And I'm there going, and I missed the whole thing because I only did the first movement because I'm waiting. did it again and again, thinking, gee, he's taking a long time over this one.
Ooh, which one was that one? I can't remember. Anyway,
I think it was Elvis movement.
So you can see, so you can see what my fallback position is now. You see, so I've got a script. Yes, I'll get the script going.
So it's just funny because for me, I was looking forward to having the steps broken up.
Yeah.
Whereas for you, it's the exact opposite.
So this is good.
Yeah, you like
I
that.
can do this in my own time. I can
Yeah.
do this out of my own time.
Yeah. So that's the space that we're opening up into, right? And it assumes something, just like in the tango class, it assumes that you have the capacity to be forward with your weight and not locking up your degrees of freedom through your trunk, you know. I think it was in Melbourne 4 when Julie and Alan Questel were the co-educational directors. There was a student in the training program. Her and her partner were avid tango dancers, avid. They were very good at it. And every FI lesson she had with me, it was always something to do with tango, something about the details of tango and the flow through the body and this or that and the other thing. And at the graduation party, I finally got to meet her partner. And because I've heard Jerry Carson, who likes doing Argentinian tango, he says, tango is the closest thing to FI you'll ever get. I would beg the question, I would think contact improv is, because there's give and take in, listening, give and take in contact improv. Yeah, it's both. Yeah. Sublime. So I said to him, I've heard this thing about tango and functional integration. Could you lead me, please? I said, sure, no problem. So he put me in the frame, and it's like even before he made a move, I could sense the move because we're sensitive like that. It was like, what? But it wasn't a what in the surprised way. It was like, yep. There's something about the clarity and the definiteness of intention that is palpable, perceivable, hearable, tasteable, whatever sense there's something about it. Yeah. Anything else? Something else? You've got another one? Okay.
There's just been a few instances when music has come up, like when I was working with Jane and we were joking around doing it was the seated one like that. And we found with a little bit of a waltz, like, it kind of worked. But yeah, I was teaching myself a while ago, or I have been for a while, how to skate backwards because I've never learnt as a kid. I used to skate all the time, but probably 2 years ago I went ice skating and I started there to learn how to go backwards, and then roller skating as well with my daughter. But it's amazing how much better I did with the right music. And it's hilarious because it was actually Xanadu.
Xanadu.
When I actually,
Xanadu. What were you doing? I didn't see you. Do it again. Oh, yes.
It was, honestly, it was the first time I did probably 8 laps backwards with a bit of speed involved as well, and felt smooth, didn't feel like I was going to crash or, a bit less giraffe leggy or whatever. So the right music helps. I didn't quite.
It's those of you who music is very much a part of your life, like yourself. There's a wonderful book out there called "This Is Your Brain on Music," and it talks about how much music is like this. It's like this organizes the nervous system. I mean, this is something that music therapists have known for a long, long time, even before the recent research came in. But there was that recent study where they interviewed people in care facilities who were kind of like lethargic, listless, couldn't remember things. Do you know that study? The important part of the study is what was the music of the era that they liked? And once you play the music of that era, what happens inside that person's nervous system, inside all their juicy bits? And suddenly they become lucid. Parkies people can move because how does Alexander Luria? They kind of cruise on the kinetic melody of the music. Yeah, it's an amazing tool. If we're going to talk about environment, for some people, maybe you'd want a musical environment. Get them to bring the music, the one that they want to select. Yeah, pretty cool stuff. Yeah, don't you select it, let them select it. Hopefully there'll be a match. Heavy metal! No. It's like,
My husband's a dentist and he does that.
does he?
Yes. It's calming.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He's got, they have Sonos. Just choose whatever you want and stick it on. And
beautiful. Yeah, yeah. Well, as a dentist, yes, you don't want that single pitch in that room. No. No, that's not good. Yeah, yeah. My dentist does the same. He plays. You see? That's better. That's better. Yeah, yeah. Mine just plays opera. I just happen to like opera, so that's fine. Maybe. Maybe. Maybe true. Maybe true. Okay. What's the time? I can't even see the clock. Okay. 22. So we've been going for 45 minutes. 20 to 11. Yeah. Yeah. An hour and a bit. Okay. So I said that the next thing is games. So we'll play some games. Is that all right? Let's do one game, then we'll have a water in and water out break, and then we'll play some more. So can you and I model the game, Lisa? Sure. I'll go get a chair. You go sit on the table. Whack duck. See? Male, female, gender. Is there something to this? I'm not sure. Yeah. No. You can sit on that one, and I'll sit on another one. Just so that can be side onto the camera. And I can stick out my belly. So, I'm being totally honest when I say to you, I'm a very shy chap, and me in relationship with strangers is a bit tricky. You're not a stranger, sort of. I'm not sure yet. So the practice of functional integration for me was very, very challenging, really, really challenging. So I would literally spend hours in my my small 20 square meter office playing with stuff to develop my interaction skills. So if we put this roller between us like this, because in this lesson today you'll be maybe you'll choose to use your hands, to create a force through the skeleton up to the head. Or maybe you'll choose to use your hands. Well, let's just stick with the first one. Well, let's just say this is the skeleton, right? And Lisa is the person's nervous system. Now, I can have a single intention, which is to create a force through here such that it goes straight through. Right. Now, you tell me, I'm going to start intending at a certain moment, and you tell me when you feel the intent, okay? Yeah. Straight away. However, what often happens when we encounter something heavy and that's got multiple segments, in other words, it's bendable, sometimes the intent, I'm going to make an exaggeration here, sometimes the intent ends up deviating. It goes up, or it goes down, or it goes left, or it goes right. So there's 5 possibilities here. Let's just play with 5 possibilities. You could play a lot. So the game is this. I intend any of those 5 possibilities. 1, directly forward, and Lisa goes, yep. Next one, that was up, yep. Next one, not for the moment. Yeah. You will be doing this with your eyes closed, yeah? So basically, Lisa is the nervous system detecting how is this arriving? Is it arriving straight ahead? Is it arriving to the left? Is it arriving to the right? And she's detecting the moment the force arrives. And first of all, you do want to do this with your eyes open so that you can calibrate, yeah? And you might want to create exaggerations. Oh, that's down. That's the feeling of down. That's the feeling of your right. That's the feeling of your left. That's the feeling of your up. And that's straight ahead, yeah? And then you just play the game. You can start off grossly, and then you can make it subtler and subtler and subtler. So let's go for subtle. Yeah. Yeah. Yep, forward, yep. Yep. Now that was a really interesting moment because Lisa then actually offered some resistance, which is great. And as she offered resistance, what you felt in your hand, and she went, she felt the roller going, yeah, let's stay on track, adjust, let's stay on track, yeah. Does that make sense, that game? I think we've got enough of these. These are great because they're bendable and they're compressible. So this is what I meant. There is a large one around here somewhere. Where is it? Oh, it's over there. Now this is what I meant about the So if I'm pressing on this roller, and I definitely want to compress it throughout its length and for it not to deform left or right very much, I have to keep on adjusting. You can see it's starting to vibrate, yes? Can you see that? Yeah. And every time it changes, I shift. I'm applying quite a lot of pressure. Now you can see that there's a certain place that's buckled. If I keep going like this, I can't anymore, that's it. I have enough abdominal strength. It's actually lifting me off the chair. Yeah. Yeah. So if I now release it, yeah. So as you push literally through a person's skeleton, you are collecting weight. But we have another one. We have another game for that. So is the game clear? You first calibrate 5 directions, forward, up, down, left, right, until your partner can get a sense of it. Then your partner closes their eyes, and then you continue. This is what the Sydney people found. I'll tell you now. They were very, very surprised how little they needed to do, the pusher, for the other person to sense what was going on. And this is some of the things that you were saying about watching Jenny's FIs. Right? Okay. Go and play. what's nice about doing these kinds of exercises, because things come up. So when when Lisa and I were working together, Lisa was kind of like a fixed end on the other side. That's like person's head lying on the table. Yeah. They can't see there. Now, I could do this and this, right? And I could do this and this. And I could just lean in. But I didn't. I kept my hands basically where they were, had a certain hold on the roller, didn't vary the hold, and then moved myself in such a way that the roller bowed down, moved myself in such a way that the roller went forward, moved myself in such a way that the roller bowed up, rolled left. Yeah. So we're not doing big displacements of the body. It's just this one place, and you're trying to find out how can you create those 5 different directions. The Jello pudding lesson last week, the very last lesson, you know how I introduced that word purchase? You try to find a purchase on the floor. Well, your purchase, if you're sitting, is the surface that you're sitting on. And what is the source of purchase? Your butt and the seat. What were you doing in that lesson last week? You were pushing and pulling the spine, were you not? It just so happens that you're doing the same thing here, except you're holding a roller. So you use your purchase on the seat to push the roller. Today's lesson is about how that connects up through the arm. So we haven't done that yet, but think from the pelvis to the spine, to the arms, to the roller. If you push the seat differently, the roller is going to bend this way, or that way, or that way, or that way, or just go straight ahead. It's not that you're not using your arms, it's that you're not using your arms only. That's it. And in a few moments' time, if you could swap over, that'd be great.